Our first speaker today will be Marcelo Neto, and the topic of his presentation will be the influence of spirits in our lives. And to give you a little background on Marcelo, he was born in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and has resided in the United States since 1997. He has a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. Marcelo is a co-founder of the Conscious Living Spiritist group in North Miami, where he serves as vice president on the board of directors. As an active supporter of the Spiritist movement, he is also the current president of the Spiritist Federation of Florida. As a vigorous participant in the United States Spiritist movement, Marcelo has joined the United States Spiritist Council, where he serves as treasurer on the board of directors in the role of disseminating Spiritist books for the United States and Canada. He represents Edisi of America, which is an affiliated branch of the International Spirits Council publisher, as president. And just a little brief note on Edisi of America. It's a wonderful, wonderful place to find Spiritist literature, and they're easily accessible online at edisiofamerica.com, is it? .com. And I've personally ordered books from them. The process is very simple, very efficient. You receive the books very quickly. They're all of the highest quality in translation. One note, if you go online looking for Spiritist literature, there's a lot of places where you can buy it. And even Amazon.com has almost all of the codification books, we call them, the 5 books put together by Allan Kardec that gives us the basis of the Spiritist philosophy. However, a lot of the publications that you find, the editions, are from older translations. And sometimes the English and the older translations can be quite tedious to read as the language has changed dramatically in the last 100 years. So all of the books that are sold and published by Edisi of America are current up-to-date translations in modern-day English, and very well done. So thank you for all the hard work and dedication involved in that. So without further ado, I'd like to present Mr. Neto as our first presenter.
Well, good morning, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, friends. It is an honor to be here by the invitation of all these Spiritist centers that gather here to try to disseminate a little bit about this beautiful teachings that we once heard and touches our lives so profoundly, so deeply. May the light, may the love of Jesus be among us, inspiring us so we can be instruments of peace. The topic today, the influence of spirits in our lives, are most of the time something that bother us, because I was searching on the internet about this topic, and I saw many perspectives about many ways to analyze the influence of our spirits. We see a vision of a Catholic Church. We see a vision from a perspective of a Baptist, evangelicals, Presbyterian, Muslims, many branches, many sources. And we see most of them, they agree, they believe that there is some kind of influence in our lives. And of course, the interpretation is a little different. But once we get in touch with this body of knowledge that Spiritism brings to all of us, the idea gets tremendously clear. And we find, in fact, answers to our questions. Maybe it's my energy. my wallet. Maybe it's loaded, yeah. So, but the first question, the first slide that we are going to address, actually we find the same question at the preliminary notions on the Medium's book, which is a book that I tremendously recommend for each one of us to take a read, to take a look. And the question is, are there spirits? What do you think? We see a number of incarnated people over here. See, we all guys can touch one another. But do you think are we alone in this room? I guess at least we have the double amount of people over here. At least the guardian angel has to be here trying to follow us, to guide us through their inspiration, their ideas. And we should have a clear and concise idea about the spirits, the spirit realm, and the constant interaction between the two realms of life. Well, on the Medium's book, on the slide, they're here also. It says in the beginning that the cause of doubt regarding the existence of spirits is due primarily to ignorance of their true nature. Spirits are usually imagined to have been created as a separate class of beings whose existence has not yet been proven. Many people are only familiar with spirits because of the fantastic stories they heard when they are children. We all of us heard stories about spirits, and we love those stories because it cherishes us. It invites us to that life goes on, that we are always together with somebody else, even though in a very difficult moments, we have to have in mind that we are never, never alone. And going forward with the slides, the same question, the same paragraph on the Medium's books bring to us these very same questions. Do you think that the being within us who thinks during earthly life no longer thinks after death? Do you think everything that we acquire as far as intellectual, as far as knowledge, as far as feelings that we demonstrate by one another, do you think this simply disappear? Another question is brought by the Medium's book, that if it does think, it no longer thinks of those whom it has loved. Do you think the bonds that ties us over here simply disappear? Where is the mercy? Where is the love that the Creator demonstrates by each one of us? If this very brief amount of time that we experience on the face of the earth, simply it doesn't mean anything. If we follow the steps of Arthur Schopenhauer in the 18th century, the great philosopher, but he also known as a philosopher of pessimism, and he gave advice to his students that the reason of suffering in life is because we exist. So he recommends deeply that we have to end our lives, to suicide ourselves, because this is the reason of all the suffering. And one of the students says, why you did not kill yourself? Who is going to be here to give you guys advice? So that's really a question that brings us and invites us to think about it, even if we live a long period of time, this all ends by the grave. Since we're going to, that's my personal opinion, because it's not the personal opinion, it's the Spiritist doctrine's opinion, And this is, I'm placing this same point for you to analyze, because I know you might have someone here that not familiarized with the Spiritist teachings. And this is an invitation so we can think about it and to lie down on these same questions to see, do you think these bonds are simply disappear? Another question is that if this think of those whom it has loved, it nonetheless does not wish to communicate with them. We have the desire to communicate with them, and sometimes they have the desire to communicate with us. Of course, there's a proper time to do this, but we have this desire going forward, that if it can be anywhere it wants to be, it cannot be right here beside us. Are you feeling the presence of someone right beside you? There's a possibility. How many of you once felt deeply the presence of something? I'm not saying the Spirit, but something. Sometimes hearing voices, sometimes someone touching you, sometimes you actually hear, it looks like a physical voice. Someone was whispering to your ears. I did. I know many, many friends that did once, that felt strongly the presence of someone beside of us. Going forward to the next slide. That if it is right here beside us, it nevertheless cannot communicate with us. Who are we, in fact? Who are we? We are spirits living momentarily with a physical life in order to learn. Because here we face the challenges that sometimes we don't face at the other realm of life. I'm not saying that the other realm of life we don't have challenge. Yes, we do have challenges. But here, because of the limitations that we face, we can get old, we can get fat, in my case. So we experience very important experiences that makes the difference in the trajectory of the immortal being, which are all of us. Going forward, the question 459 of the Spirit's book, Allan Kardec brings us, do spirits have any influence on our thoughts and actions? And it comes an answer that clarifies us in a very important and very interesting way to analyze this question, which is their influence on you in this regard is greater than you suppose, for very frequently it is they who guide you. We are here among people. In society, we have our families, we have our professions, we have our jobs, we have friends that sometimes influence our lives, give us advice, talk to us. Sometimes we agree, sometimes don't. But they make influence in our lives. Government, decisions. Do you think this is different? When the spirits that once were here cross this line, go to the other realm of life, sometimes they do, and they interact with us. And this influence can be good and could be bad, accordingly with the content that we carry on inside of us. And that's why an invitation made by Jesus long ago for us to be love, light, throughout the passages that all the apostles brought to us, is an invitation for us to generate lines of thought in accordance with prosperity, with harmony, with love. So many people may think that we are at hands of the spirits because this influence, but we are not at hands of the spirits, because the final word belongs to each one of us. Even among here, in a physical realm, sometimes, of course, I can receive an influence, an advice from Bob that's sitting right in front of me. I can follow this opinion or not. Maybe Dennis, maybe Andrea, maybe Daniel, João, and many of you talk to us, and we accepted the idea or not. We can be influenced, but sometimes the whisper that they do in our ears, quoting, because it's not like literally the way that I'm talking, it's so strong, and because we are so desperate, so anxious, or sometimes we are so harmonious in line with this law of love, that we simply surrender by the influence of the spirits that could be positive or negative in our lives. Do we have our own thoughts plus others that are suggested to us? And the answer: your soul is a spirit who thinks by itself. Nevertheless, you must have noticed that many thoughts occur to you all at the same time with regards to the same subject, and that they frequently contradict one another. Well, they are always a combination of your own ideas and other spirits' ideas, and this is what hinders you uncertain. You have several ideas within your mind, battling it out with each other. Science has proven that once we think, we emit a mental wave. So we are immersed in the ocean of mental waves. Long waves, short waves, medium waves. And these waves can be in synchronicity, can resonate with the same waves of others. How many times you guys receive a call, someone thinking, I was thinking about you and you just called me. And it happened more often than we believe. It goes more and more. Me and my wife, sometimes, we are thinking something, different rooms, different places, and she simply calls me. I was thinking about this. And I says, like, this is unbelievable because I was thinking exactly this that you just taught me, that you just told me. So it happens to each one of you if you pay attention. This is frequently, very frequent. This could happen the same time, the same way with the spirits, because they lost their body, but they did not lose their conscience. Pardon my English sometimes, big mistakes in grammar. And forgive me, bear with me please. But I guess you understand, yeah? So we are immersed in this beautiful ocean of waves. What kind of waves we want to be in synchronicity? Let's think about that we are a radio, AM, FM. When we want to hear news, music, we simply go to that station, we adjust the station, and we are going to hear classical music, rock and roll, samba in my case. No, in my case it's it's classical music. Please erase this part of the video. Nothing against samba, it's a beautiful way. I'm just joking. And we adjust the tune and we hear what we want to listen. The same way, once we are in tune with the divine laws, we can adjust our heart and to get in touch with the amount of spirits that simply wants to embrace us and to cherish us and to give us good advice. It's going to be up to us to adjust the radio that resides inside of each one of us. So your soul is a spirit who thinks by itself. Nevertheless, you must have noticed that many thoughts occur to you at the same time. Already, so they battle. They battling inside, because sometimes we receive messages from one spirit and from the other, because not all the spirits have the whole knowledge of everything, and sometimes because of the content that we have, we simply got immersed imagine like we are in a conference room and the meeting has been established and we see the opinion of 1, 2, 3, many people are giving their opinions. And we have our own opinions. Sometimes this happens inside of us. We are capturing these waves, left and right. And sometimes, in order for us to respond, make silence, meditate, try to find out what is going to be the best answer according to the law of love, to the law that Christ established long ago. And we can go on. In the book, In the Realms of Mediumship, it says, we are all instruments of the forces with which we are in tune. We are all mediums within our own mental field, associating ourselves with edifying energies when our thoughts flow towards the higher life, or with disturbing and depressing forces, as long as we are still enslaved to the shadows of primeval or tormented life. Through the sentiments that characterize the inner life, all individuals emit specific rays and live within the spiritual wave with which they identify themselves. This is on the preface of this book. And we can think about it. Who we want to be. We can be, in the presence of St. Francis of Assisi, an instrument of peace. When he asked, Lord, make me an instrument of your peace, was not something politically correct that he was saying. He truly feels that way. He felt it that way. And we see, be an instrument of the Lord's peace. It means, I don't know much, but I want to be in tune with the higher spheres of life. According to the rays we emit, our own spiritual dwelling will rise within the wave of thoughts preferred by our souls. So it means, try to get in tune with something that's going to lead us to a better decision and to a harmonious way to get your answers in connection with something that goes divine, that goes beyond this realm. We can see also in the presence of Paul of Tarsus, when he says, therefore, since we too are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us leave behind everything that hinders. Paul of Tarsus felt the presence of many, many spirits. And he says, it looks like a multitude of spirits, they're following me. And we mentioned this on the 7th Symposium in Dallas, that he looks like he was being followed by this multitude. Why? Because in this multitude of spirits, they want to know, let's see if this great transformation that Paul are experiencing at this moment is true. Because we all know, and most of us know, that he came from the persecuting Christians, trying to protect the Mosaic law from his encounter in the pathway of Damascus with the Lord, and he simply surrendered by the image of Jesus, says Lord, what do you want me to do? And then all those years that pass, he was transforming himself, trying to see and analyze and making a complete revision in the pathway of his life, in his trajectory, in order to be in alignment with the divine providence. And then all this multitude of spirits are simply following him. A few to give them strength, to give him strength to keep going, and others, let's see what he's doing, what he's preaching, is aligned with what he thought and what he thinks. So we will see by the speech of our friend Divaldo Franco that says, when we consider this, we remember the friendly suggestion that our friend Divaldo, as I said before, of not doing behind closed doors what we would not do in public, because in reality we are always in company of other spirits. But how can we distinguish between our thoughts by the one that's suggested to us? Go back to the Spirit's book, and we will see in question 461. When a thought is suggested to you, it is like a voice speaking to you. Your own thoughts are usually those that occur to you at first impulse. Actually, you should not concern yourself with such a distinction, and it is often more useful not even to know about it. You act more freely. If you make the right decision, you will act more willingly. If you make the wrong one, your responsibility will be greater. This is also in question 461. And Allan Kardec was so eloquent about his questioning to the good spirits that in considering that answer above, he comes back and asks the following question. How can we tell if a suggested thought comes from a good or evil spirit? And let's study the matter that good spirits give only good advice. It is your responsibility to make the distinction. And this is true. How many of us sometimes look for advice of someone, a friend, a parent, a grandmother? It always gives good advice, trying to put us back in track. And here's some kind of inspirational message. So in the depth of our sentiments, our feelings, we can get in line with something that bring us back peace, that most often simply disappear because of the frailty that we still carry on inside of us. So it is very clear we are the ones to make the distinction. And many times, of course, we blame the spirits because we were influenced by these spirits. But as I said before, the final word belongs to us. Going to the 17th slide. So the question is, can we avoid the influence of spirits who incite us to wrongdoing? Yes, because they only attack themselves to those who solicit them with their desires or attract them with their thoughts. This is on Spirit's Book on question 467. On 469, by what means can we neutralize the influence of evil spirits? By doing good. Let me read it from here. By doing good and placing all your trust in God, you repel their influence and you destroy the power they desire to have over you. Guard yourselves against listening to the suggestions of spirits who excite evil thoughts in your mind, those who incite discord and arouse in you all the evil passions. Above all, distrust spirits who flatter your pride, for they are attacking you at your weakest point. That is why Jesus teaches you to say in the Lord's Prayer, Lord, do not let us fall into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Whenever a negative thought crosses our mind, let's try to substitute this thought for a positive one. I know it's easy to say, and sometimes we're so overwhelmed by these negative thoughts, problems that we might face, and sometimes problems difficult to challenge, difficult to overcome. but we have to try. This is going to be a habit. And this habit one day will be exactly the line of way that you behave naturally. And let's try to do this. Also, prayer is a very powerful tool which allows us for connectivity with the higher realms of life. Of course, as long as this prayer is very sincere and it has the objective of self-betterment, the objective of not doing bad for others, to reconcile with others. The objective of prayer has to be sometimes to ask for peace, ask for tranquility, so we can be more in line with God. Food for thought. Does prayer make people better? Yes. Yes, because those who pray fervently and confidently strengthen themselves against the temptation of evil, and God sends them good spirits to assist them. Such help is never refused by sincerely ask for. This is also in the Spirit's book in question 660. The Spirit's book reminds us that our trials is in our hands. They are those that must be endured to the very end. However, God always takes resignation into account. Prayer attracts the good spirits as long as it's sincere, and give us the strength, as we saw in the slide, the necessary strength for us to go on. Heaven helps those who help themselves. But let's be very vigilant. Let's be very disciplined people, because sometimes we don't even feel the will to pray. Going back to the presence of spirits and the questioning that we have a soul, we have a spirit, I am going to bring you a few stories that I think will translate many of my anguish, many of my questions when I were long ago, when I got in contact with the Spiritist teachings, with the Spiritist doctrine. I had a friend, a nice friend. He was a car racer. And what happened is, he was a very good car racer, by the way, in Brazil. And was an accident that happened, that took place back then. And because of the nature of the accident, he was about to pass away. The whole family was invited to the hospital. He was in the UTI, ICU. Thank you very much, Kirsten. And they were Catholic, even the priest. The father was invited by the family to give the last words. They call extrema-unção. I don't know how to translate this. Less rites. Less rights, if I have a right to be there, okay. So less rights. Thank you, Juan. So the whole family was there. He was unconscious. He was in coma. The family was brought to that room. But the funny thing is, because he was overlooking the whole room. Even he went outside of that little room. He saw the nurse walking to the hallway, talking to someone in the front desk. And this description were given by him because after miraculous, we know we don't believe in miracles the way that we used to believe, because of course there is an explanation for the miracles. We can see this by take a look at Genesis, the last book of Allan Kardec's codification. But because he resuscitated miraculously, and all the family were like amused by, oh my God, what happened? The mother was crying, sobbing, because he simply opened his eyes and he described, and would be impossible for him to describe, everything that happened, not even inside that room, but around the whole hospital. He gave the detailed information, and he could not know this. Even the family, the parents, the priest, the nurse that were accompanying them inside of that room. And he described many, many things that happened in the hospital. And because the amount of information was so tremendous, detailed, they went out to cross the information, and they found out, my God, how come you saw all of this? And he says, like, I simply saw, as if I was overlooking the whole thing. From that time, that friend transformed his life completely. He was more like an easygoing way of type of man, like not worry about spirituality. From that day, he started studying more and more about the existence of the soul. And he started feeling the presence of others, relatives that went to the other side of the realm. And sometimes he see it and he describe it with the tremendous amount of details. People, grandmothers that he never knew, and giving him advices that he simply like passed it on to the rest of the family. And he became a source of light in that family cell. And I'm sure you all have many stories about the presence of spirits, about the existence, the afterlife, that we simply go on. That this stage of our existence, it's not going to end by the grave. There's one beautiful story that, forgive me if many of you already know, but I think exemplifies pretty much the influence of the spirits in our lives. And I am going to present you here another good friends. We all have very good friends that give us from time to time beautiful advices and tell us stories that touches our heart. And we are going to one day tell our stories to others. The wedding at Cana. I have 5 minutes? 15 minutes. No, I have time for this. Okay. The wedding at Cana, it's the very beautiful, significant story about when Jesus went to a wedding, and one determined moment, the wine simply finishes, and the groom was very close friend of Jesus. And he was so embarrassed. And he talked to Mary, Jesus' mother, says like, well, the wine simply finishes. I'm so embarrassed, because back then, the wedding took like 7 days. Imagine 7 days on a wedding. And it simply ends. So Jesus was invited to do something. And Jesus asked to bring like all the bottles of water, not bottles exactly, like the containers of water. And he transformed water into wine. And what this passage has to do with the presence of spirits in our lives. And here comes the story. This gentleman, a very close friend of ours, many of you already know him, belonged to a group that goes from time to time to different places in order to deliver some kind of comfort, some kind of hope. Prisons, hospices, hospitals, many places. And it was very close to the Christmas time. And he was invited to say something to the prisoners of that prison in Rio de Janeiro. And because he was so empty, his heart was like, I have no inspiration. I don't know what to say to those fellows because nothing crosses my mind. And it's supposed to, it would be in a Sunday, one day before he would go, when he was going to bed, he did a fervent prayer. And then he woke up and something crosses his mind as if was somebody whispering to him, talk about the wedding of Cana, at Cana. He says, like, the wedding at Cana? This spirit must be a little cuckoo, because what this has to be with a prison, I don't know where I'm going to find the connection between how to inspire those that are there in desperation. But he decided to follow because of the prayer, because it was so gentle, was so nice the way that advice was whispered to his ears, and he decided to follow that advice. He was there, and they invite all the secretary, the manager of that prison, invite all the prisoners to be there in that little room. Well, they had a little music, just like here, preparing the ambience. They perform a little prayer, heartfelt prayer, and they invite this man, this gentleman. His name is Caesar Reyes, to conduct his speech and to say a few words in order to touch that prisoner's hearts. And he explained the whole passage about the wedding at Cana. But by the end, he was getting to the end of the passage, and then something crosses his mind, exactly the same, with the same voice that he heard in the morning. Now you're going to say, and when you accept the gospel of Jesus, not a book, a way of living, loving one another, doing to others what we would like to receive, being an instrument of your peace, you transform your life from water to wine. Because of the vibratory content of those words professed by him was so impact, many prisoners there start like crying and feeling the presence of someone. Can you imagine how many mothers that passed away are wishing for their sons to be better, to resist to the temptations? I cannot even imagine this. But there was one man, one prisoner by the end of the room that simply kept his face so angry, eyebrow like this, like a roof, sad, and we can almost grab his vibration, his psychosphere that we call, like what is surrounded him, so anxious, so in desperation. So everything ends. All the prisoners went to their cells, and that prisoner was the last one. And all these volunteers that goes from time to time, when Caesar Reyes was crossing the hallway, that man grabbed his arm and says like, hey, I want to talk to you before I go to my cell. Do you truly believe what you just said? And Caesar Reyes looked at his eyes and says like, yes, I do. I truly believe what I just said. You don't know what you're saying, he said to him. He replied, here's a living hell. I sometimes felt like suiciding, killing myself. I heard voices, and I hear voices frequently that I felt like killing others and then killing myself after that. It looks like someone is talking to me, just the way we are having this conversation. You don't know what you're saying. And Caesar Reyes look at his eyes now, grab his both arms, and look at his eyes and says like, I am not lying to you. I truly believe this. I know it's going to be hard, but I truly believe if you resist the temptations, if you follow, at least try to follow the gospel of Jesus, you will transform your life from water to wine. And then a tear came from his eyes, both eyes, Cesare's and the other guy's. And now the guy that took care of him, like, now it's time to go. He took him by the arm, grabbed him, and went to the cell. Cesare's was with his image and what he thought, he was talking to him like in his mind. But time goes by, passes go by, and he never saw that man before that, after that situation. Many years has passed, more than 30 years. And this same guy, Cesare's, this same gentleman, was invited to talk in a Spiritist center in the suburbs of Rio de Janeiro, in a very poor area of Rio de Janeiro. Simple Spiritist center, where they were working with homeless and people there in desperation. They don't have like the same kind of instruments here. Very dirt. The floor was dirt. Benches. No PowerPoint presentation. Just someone there trying to establish a connection, trying to give them an inspiration, no message to those that are coming to that Spiritist center. And Cesare's didn't know the director of that center. He sat down in the front row, and then came like the director of that center. White hair, a little like this, short, sat down beside Cesare's. They look at each other. It says like, and Cesare's like was amused, like, oh my God, it's you? I said like, yes, it's me. Oh my God, they hold each other. It says like, what happened? I follow your advice. I'm going to tell you, it was very, very hard. And when he was talking to Caesar, he was crying and sobbing, because I'm not saying that the voices simply disappear from my mind. They kept going and whispering to me like, do kill your others, because others are going to kill you. But I was trying to resist, and your mind, your eyes, the way that you addressed that subject to me was so touching that any time that someone, this invisible one, was whispering in my ear, I try to change and substitute this thought by the advice that you gave me. And then, now I am here, being a director of the Spiritist Center. And I'm telling you, it's hard sometimes. But because of that thought, because of that moment, I transformed my life from water to wine. And this invitation, my fellow brothers over here, is made by all of you. This might be not a best lecture that you heard before, but it is indeed, at least from the depth of my heart, an invitation for us to help me and for us to help each other to be the light, and to give sometimes an advice for someone that is in desperation, because he might be subject to other influences. When we pass away, we're not going to be transforming angels with wings, with all the wisdom in the world. We are full of vices. But thank God, we already have a few virtues. Let's potentialize those virtues and be the instrument of the Lord's peace. We all can be an instrument of the Lord's peace. And then the influence of the spirits are not going to be the one that influenced that man in the cell, in the prison long ago. It could be a gentle one giving us a nice advice so we can pass it on this to others. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and God bless all of us. We're going to have João Korngold. They're going to bring us a much better lecture, talking pretty much about the influence and the presence of the spirits in our daily lives. Thank you very much. Thank you.